turn now to Susan, who is a part-time PhD student at the University of Winchester within the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. Her research explores the impact of women's work at the Family Planning Association in Birmingham and Winchester from the Second World War until the 1950s. And she will be speaking on the Family Planning Association, Fertility Support for Women, 1945 to 1955. Over to you.
Are you able to see that?
Yes, that all looks good. We can see, yes, I would say the minute you put it into presenter mode, it will be perfect.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jo, for the introduction. So, as Jo mentioned, my topic today is on the Family Planning Association, Fertility Support for Women, 1945 to 1955. And as Jo explained, it incorporates part of my part-time PhD, which is looking at the support of the Family Planning Association during this period in Birmingham and Winchester. So to start, I've divided up the presentation into two parts based on the title. So firstly, I'm going to be looking at a fertility support, and I've highlighted the key bits in blue throughout the presentation. So those are the key terms. So the first part is fertility support. It's really focusing on why the topic is important and having a look at the context surrounding it. And the second part is looking at the Family Planning Association, but primarily looking at the work of Margaret Jackson, who is based at Exeter, and the connection and sort of influence her research had in both Birmingham and Winchester. The first part is looking at fertility support. And as Jo mentioned, my research focuses on the Family Planning Association, which is an organisation to help couples make well-informed choices regarding sex and contraception. So after the lockdown, when I was able to actually access all the different archives, I was surprised how much information I found on infertility. So the Wellcome Library in London is the main archive for family planning. And while I found some information on birth control and family planning methods, I found quite a lot of material on infertility, and this really surprised me and developed my interest in the topic. And I'm going to show you now a few of the resources I found at the Wellcome Library. So the documents I'm going to show you now are based in the 1950s, and I feel they really show the importance of fertility support. So the first is a quote from Birmingham, and it's the Birmingham Constitution, and it's really showing the aims of the Family Planning Association in Birmingham during this period. And the main line I've shown is to encourage the production of healthy children who are an asset to the nation. And I think that really emphasises the importance of children during this period, but also that quote, which I've put in bold, of an asset to the nation, which really links back to the Second World War and is something I'll be having a look at in the next slide. The next quote is from Winchester. And instead of a constitution, it's looking at the types of cases sent by the doctor to the Winchester Family Planning Clinic from 1954 to 1955. And it has this line of fertility cases and the line, many of which we can help. And I think that's really key, because it's not just a fertility cases being sent to the doctor. It's actually the other way around. The Family Planning Clinic in Winchester are actually dealing with these cases themselves. And I think it really shows by this point how much knowledge and expertise the clinic had in this area. And this is something that I'm going to be having a look at through the presentation in how this actually came about. So the context. So I mentioned briefly when I was looking at the Birmingham Constitution, some information about the Second World War. And on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a poster, and it's from the Second World War. It's a propaganda poster of a woman and her child with the line "Don't waste bread," and it's really showing the disruption that a lot of families faced and individuals faced during the Second World War. And numerous scholars, and I've highlighted here Claire Langhammer, they really emphasise the increased importance of motherhood in the post-war period. So because of this disruption during the Second World War, there was, I suppose, a need and want in the post-war period for families and family life. And this is why infertility support became so popular. So the second part, as I mentioned, is looking at Dr. Margaret Jackson, and she was really a forefront in infertility support. And I'm going to be looking at now some of the research and work she was involved with. So Margaret Jackson was the wife of a local GP who supported her in her family planning work. And that's really key. And later in the presentation, I'm going to be looking at some of the work her and her husband were involved with internationally. But Margaret Jackson helped found the first birth control clinic in the Southwest, which was in Exeter in 1930. And when patients started to come because of concerns, not just of birth control, but also infertility, she became influential in this area as well. And this is something I'm going to look at now. So infertility research at Exeter. So there's two pictures of Exeter here. The first one is of the University of Exeter. And the University of Exeter in 1948 put forward a very important conference which Margaret Jackson helped organise, and was an influential conference on infertility. So as I mentioned, it was the Conference on Infertility, September 1948. It was based at the University of Exeter. And what's really key is that the conference was part of a group of conferences which started in Exeter in 1944. So the very fact that Exeter hosted one in 1944 and then less than 5 years later are hosting a second one, I think really shows how key Exeter was during this period. And as I mentioned, it was organised by Dr. Margaret Jackson along with other members of the Exeter Family Planning Association. And I've put her title here as a medical officer to the Exeter Family Planning Clinic, and that's really key. So she's not just working at the clinic now, she's actually advising on medical cases, both to patients and other people working at the clinic. And this conference in 1948 was really key as it focused on male and female subfertility. And I'm going to be mostly focusing on female subfertility, but I will look at some male examples as well. Margaret Jackson presented 2 papers at the conference, so she didn't just organise it, she also presented her research. Her first was on a vitamin E, and her second was on basal temperature charts. And this is really key because she was challenging current research. So Evan Shute, who was a researcher in 1944, claimed that vitamin E helped male infertility, and Margaret Jackson claimed at this conference that that actually wasn't true. She conducted her own clinical trials and found no evidence at all to actually support this. So she's challenging fairly recent research and really giving groundbreaking evidence on infertility. She also revealed why temperature charts didn't work, and this was really important because it was quite a simple way of clinics and patients being able to have a look at infertility as a first sort of approach. And she really looked at why they didn't work, and this included practical issues, so not just the thermometer not working, but patients not being able to shake the thermometer down properly, so they were only recording part of bits of information, or they stopped recording it at all, thinking it was inaccurate. And this was really key, as I said, because it meant that clinics could get a very good idea of why it wasn't working and could put things in place. And her research was also used by other researchers, and this is what I'm going to look at now. So Dr. H.A. Davidson, who is the medical director of the Family Planning Association laboratories in London, contrasted Jackson's research on vitamin E. So Davidson only used male patients, whereas Jackson used male and female. And so they could, Davidson could really contrast all the different data quite easily through Jackson's research. So you can see how important it was during this period. And researchers in Birmingham also used Jackson's research, and this is something I'm going to look at now. So I've got a picture here of the University of Birmingham, and I'm just going to be discussing Birmingham in the next slide. So in Birmingham, A.C. Crook, who was based at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, which is connected to the University of Birmingham, the picture I've just shown you, and Anita M. Mandel at the medical school at the university referenced Jackson's research from the that she'd currently done, and also her research with Claire Harvey, who was also based at Exeter. I think this really shows not just her research being important at the conference, but actually at the conference, her research was part of the reference list being used by other speakers. And her ideas were also taken up in Birmingham and Winchester clinics. So I've got a picture here on the right-hand side, hopefully you can see it, of a light bulb, and it's the idea of a light bulb being passed through from person to person. And this is what I'm really trying to show about infertility support, that the ideas that Jackson was stating weren't just being taken up in Southwest or even Exeter, they were being taken up by other clinics as well. So in 1953, Jackson supported every clinic supporting subfertility. So however small the clinic was, she really believed that issues of subfertility could be looked at the clinics. And this could be done through the use of a speculum. Now, a speculum is a piece of equipment used for examination. And in Birmingham, speculums had already been bought. So in 1951, they'd already bought 2 speculums. And by 1953, they were being encouraged. So all the members at the clinic were actually discussing subfertility and encouraging patients to actually have an examination if needed. And so I'll just turn now to Winchester and the support available in Winchester. So in October 1950, there was an event at the Winchester Hospital where Family Planning Association members gave information on subfertility methods. So this is really key. This event was done through the hospital and the Family Planning Association, pooling ideas really. But what I think is so key is that the Family Planning Association by this point are the key members. They're the people that are able to discuss the most information and actually pass on their knowledge and expertise to the hospital, and not just vice versa. So I think that really shows how much information the clinic had by this period. Indeed, by 1951, there was an increase in the subfertility cases at the clinic. And I mentioned when I was looking at the documents that I'd found at the Wellcome Library, the cases sent by the doctor to the Winchester Clinic during 1954 to 1955. And it's this line that stated there were many subfertility cases which we can help with. And I think that's key. It really shows the expertise the clinic had by 1955. They were able to actually deal with a lot of cases themselves and really support women in this much needed area. So in conclusion, I've discussed the significance of Margaret Jackson's research on infertility. I've shown the importance of this to the support offered in both Birmingham and Winchester, and I've shown how much her research and ideas influenced these 2 places during the post-war period. I think it's important to note that Margaret Jackson also revised a book on family planning methods in 1950. So Norman E. Himes wrote a book called Practical Birth Control Methods in 1950, and Margaret Jackson revised this book to include information on the birth control clinics that were available in the UK with the support and opening times so that patients could actually come and have a look. And that was really key for people being interested in family planning clinics, but also knowing the information and being able to attend. And she also visited Bombay and Japan. So I mentioned earlier in the presentation this work that she did with her husband, and this is very much it. They went to Bombay and Japan together and they discussed family planning methods and infertility. And so I think this really shows not just the support she had from her husband, but that her work had not just a UK sort of element, but it also had an international dimension to it as well. For her work, she was awarded the Marshall Medal, which is awarded to outstanding contributors to the study of fertility and reproduction. So I think that really shows how key her work was. And to commemorate her work, the Margaret Jackson Centre was established. On the right-hand side, you should see an image of the Margaret Jackson Centre, and it was established in Exeter, where the old Exeter Family Planning Clinic was built. So when that was torn down to make way for a new clinic in the centre of Exeter, the actual Margaret Jackson Centre was built in her memory to show really how much influence her work had had. And it's still functioning today, and it offers a counselling service to both men and women. And I really think it shows the lasting legacy of her work and how important her work remains, not just in the post-war period that I'm studying, but also in the current climate as well. Thank you very much. And just to finish, I've put my email address on here, so if you'd prefer to email me with any questions after the conference, then I'd be very happy to take any questions. I've also put a references list of secondary sources that I found quite useful and ones that really kind of have a look at the topic, and also where I've done my primary research collection at the Wellcome Library in London. But if you'd like to have a look at that at a later time, please contact me and I can email that through to you. Thank you very much.